talk about some underrated muscles that can actually improve your frame. Because when it comes to frame maxing, right, the usual advice about frame maxing usually comes down to training the lateral delts for a wider bideltoid, right? Training the lats, mainly to look wider from the front. And that's important, right? That'll increase your bideltoid. They'll give you a V taper and make your physique look impressive from the front. However, when you turn to the side, if you don't develop certain muscle groups, right, and you turn to the side, it can really give you a flat look from the side and it can really mess up your physique, right? So there are certain muscles that you develop that will improve your frame, not just from the front, but specifically improve your frame and the appearance of your physique from the side. And without them, your physique can look really weird and just disproportional in general. And a lot of them can be big failures. And also, you have to be aware of how much muscle you can actually gain if you only focus on, let's say, lateral delts and lats, right? Because the side delts, after the first few years of training, the rate at which the side delt can grow will really slow down since it is a relatively small muscle group. So it's really helpful to have these other muscle groups that can improve your frame and your overall size and physique as well, that aren't just, the side delts and lats. So yeah, I'm going to go over these two important and very underrated side frame muscles, if you want to call them that. And let's get started. So first one is actually the glutes, right? The glutes, this might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but when it comes to the glutes, right, the glutes, firstly, it could actually be the number one most important muscle group in your lower body for aesthetics. Also, when you're training glutes, right, glute focused leg training, it is a lot less stressful and cortisol maxing and less aging than a lot of quad focused leg training, which I'll get into in a second as well. And overall, it is one of the highest SMV muscle groups in your body, right? Not just your lower body, but also in your whole body in general. Because when it comes to, if you look at any study about where they ask women, hey, what are the most attractive muscle groups? The glutes always rank as the highest lower body muscle group, right? Of all the lower body muscle groups, the glutes always rank the highest when you look at any study, any survey where they ask women which muscle is the most attractive. And in some of the surveys, right, the glutes actually rank high amongst the upper body muscle groups as well, right? So I'm going to go over the theory and explain why glutes are so important and just why it's like one of the actually just the highest priority muscle groups you can have, not just in your lower body, but in your whole body as well. So firstly, right, I talk about this a lot in my other videos, but you do not want to have big quads, right? When it comes to leg training, the common gym style leg training philosophy is to just focus on getting really big quads, and glutes and hamstrings are an afterthought. But if you actually focus on big quads, then it is actually quite subhuman, if you want to use that word, and it can really just mess up your whole physique in general, right? Because if you look at a lot of the old school bodybuilders, right, they understood this concept of the V taper versus the X frame. So basically, you want an upper body that is a V shape like that, right, like the V taper. But when it comes to the lower body, you want your legs to basically stay in line with your hips, right? That was what the classic old school bodybuilding was all about, right? Having a V taper, but your legs stay in line with the hips. Whereas in modern bodybuilding and gym cell culture, we still want, the V taper in the upper body, but all of the whole gym cell culture when it comes to leg training now has become about having really huge quads. And when you have really huge quads, you can see how instead of having legs that are in line with the hips, the quads basically sweep outwards and make an X shape. And what this does is, if you can look at this photo of Will Tennyson over here, is that because of how big his quads are, it basically makes his whole leg look wider, right? It makes his whole lower body look wider, and it just really messes up the proportions of his physique, right? Because now, because of how wide his legs are, it gives him like kind of a wide hip, right? Wide hip, feminine appearance. And because of that, it not only makes his upper body look more narrow because, proportionally wider legs make your upper body look narrow and more small. It also creates almost this like upside down triangle look in his physique, which is literally the exact opposite of what you want. So there's this misconception that, oh, having big quads is masculine, having big glutes is feminine. No, it's actually the complete opposite. Having big quads and adductors will give you like a wide hip appearance, whereas having smaller quads like this and focusing on the glutes and hamstrings, it'll give you that Y shape appearance because the glutes and hamstrings, they can't sweep out to the side like the quads do. So first point is that when it comes to leg training, you do not want to be focusing on the quads, and instead you want to be focusing on the glutes and hamstrings, mainly the glutes, as we're talking about, as the focus of your leg training, right? And if you still think that having big glutes and hamstring is feminine, just look at this example, right? When you see someone with really huge quads like this, right, just bulging quads, and there's this thing that these gym cells do is they would pull up their pants or pull down their pants and flex their quads while standing next to each other, which is super gay. But having huge quads, if you look at this guy, you can instantly tell, okay, this guy, he is a gym bro, right? If you don't want to use the term gym cell, this guy is a gym bro because of just the proportion of his legs, right? He has these disproportionately large quads, which, as we talked about, makes your whole lower body look wider and throws off your whole proportions. Whereas if you look at this guy, right, this American football player, you can see, right, he still has muscular quads, right? He by no means has small quads, but he is more glute and hamstring dominant, right? He has large glutes and very impressive hamstrings as well. And the thing with glutes and hamstrings is, again, right, when you have developed glutes and hamstrings, you'll have really muscular looking, very aesthetic and strong legs that are also functional, but it'll never sweep outwards from the front. So from the front, you can just keep your quads at a smaller size and develop your glutes and hamstrings, and it'll never mess up your whole Y-shape V-taper. Okay, so just look at that. And you also have to know that form follows function, right? Form follows function, and the most aesthetic physiques are going to be the ones that resemble athletes of, man-made sports, or resemble someone who is, if you want to get into the whole primal thing, resemble someone who is really good at throwing spears and hunting, right? And if you look at these two physiques, having legs that are more glute and hamstring focused, that's going to be way more functional, right? Because those are the most important muscle groups for running faster, jumping around, generating power, throwing spears at an animal, way more functional than someone with just big quads. If you just have big quads, you really can't do that much, right? It's not going to help you run faster. It's not going to help you jump that well. It's really not as functional. And again, form follows function. So that's why this physique is way more attractive, because when you see it, you know that's someone who can perform really well in hunting in the most primal sense. So when you train your glutes, right, you can literally make it's more functional, therefore more aesthetic, and also having big glutes can make your whole lower body look bigger, right? In this photo, you can see you can literally have small quads and mid hamstrings as well. But if you only have big glutes, then it'll just make your whole lower body look jacked. It'll make your whole body in general look more impressive, look stronger. And that is the number one muscle you should be focused on when it comes to the lower bodies, right? It's like the shoulder of the lower body. Whereas you can have big quads and even big hamstrings, but if you don't have big glutes and you're wearing pants, then your legs aren't going to look that impressive. So that's why glutes is the number one priority. And there's also the AGD theory, right? Anal genital distance theory, based on sexual dimorphism. So this is a bit of an interesting theory I've stumbled upon, but basically one of the dimorphic features that we have as males is that we have a greater AGD distance, anal genital distance. So it's basically the distance between your butthole and your genitals, right? I had to censor some of these because I don't know if YouTube is going to let me show this, but basically, right, males dimorphically have a greater anal genital distance. And the theory is that when you train glutes, right, imagine when you train glutes, you have greater protrusion from the side, right, horizontal protrusion from the side, and it creates the illusion of greater anal genital distance, right? It's same thing as when you train your side delts, you're creating the illusion that you have wider clavicles. Even though training your delts doesn't actually give you wider clavicles, it creates the illusion of that, and that's why it's so effective in improving your aesthetics. Same thing with glutes, right? Training your glutes does not actually change the distance between your anus and your penis, but it creates the illusion of that. It creates the illusion of greater anal genital distance, and yeah, that is actually a masculine dimorphic feature, just like having wide clavicles is. In fact, I'll try and find an example. Okay, so there was a specific picture I wanted to find, but I couldn't find it. So I'm just gonna have to use this one as a close example of what the picture I was looking for. But basically, right, the whole thing with anal genital distance is that when you have a greater protrusion, right, from the front to the back, like this photo of Alex Pereira, that is a very masculine dimorphic feature. Whereas if you look at a female, right, their genitals and anus are really close, whereas developing glutes and just creating this protrusion, right, this horizontal protrusion from the side, that is a very masculine dimorphic feature, right? And like I mentioned earlier, right, if you look at any study, any survey where they go out and ask a bunch of women, hey, which muscle groups are the most attractive, uh, glutes rank highest amongst all the lower body muscle groups, right? Higher than calves, higher than quads, higher than hamstrings. And in some studies, they even rank really high amongst upper body muscle groups, right? I think in one of them, glutes was ranked like second overall, with like abs being first. But in general, most of them is more upper body focused, but glutes is highest amongst the lower bodies, right? So last point I have is that, right, since it is so important for aesthetics, it's the most important lower body muscle group for aesthetics. It's way better than having big quads for aesthetics as well. And it is actually a masculine dimorphic feature, if you develop it correctly, is that when you're training glutes, right, glute and hamstring focused training tends to be a lot less stressful and cortisol maxing than quad training, right? Because I know a lot of us are concerned about causing aging in the gym and stress cortisol maxing in the gym. But specifically, when you do glute focused training, it's less stressful, right? Because traditional leg training, when you're focused on quads and leg extensions, they're basically the most stressful exercises in the gym, right? The best way to know how stressful an exercise is just how you feel and how much you enjoy doing it, right? That's a reason why everyone hates doing squats, because squats are literally the most stressful exercise you can do in the entire gym, right? Similar thing with leg extensions, right? One of the most stressful isolation exercises you can do in the entire gym. Whereas if you do something like hip thrust, right, if you've done hip thrusts before, you can probably relate to this. But hip thrusts in general are actually just a lot less stressful than squats, right? Everyone hates squats, everyone dreads doing squats, but hip thrust is really not that bad. And one of the reasons for this, if you want to get into nerdy detail, is because when you're doing squats, you're getting into a very stretched position with your muscles, right? If you look at this guy in the deep squat, his adductor is very stretched. His quads are stretched to the max in full knee flexion, and his glutes are very stretched as well. And when you have all this stretched muscle groups, all these different muscle groups at once, it's actually a lot more stressful and it does a lot more muscle damage. Whereas if you do something like hip thrust, firstly, it's mainly focused on glutes. You're not training like a bunch of these muscle groups, useless leg muscle groups all at the same time. But it is mainly in the lengthened position, right? You're never putting your knee, your hip, your adductors into a very stretched position. So in general, it's just a lot less stressful and it causes a lot less muscle damage. And also, the hip thrust is actually pretty decent at training the quads as well, right? Similar thing with back extensions, right? Doing hip thrust, let's say 6 to 8 reps hip thrust strict form to failure, or doing back extensions 6 to 8 reps to failure is way easier than doing 6 to 8 reps of squats to failure, right? That's because the nature of glute and hamstring focused exercises tend to just be a lot less stressful than quad focused leg exercises. Now, lastly, you might have the fear of, hey, what if my glutes get too big, right? What if I train my butt and it ends up looking really big and I end up looking really gay? Well, firstly, right, that's likely not going to happen, right? Because especially when you're lean, right? If you're really fat and you just naturally store more body fat there, then sure. But chances are, if you're watching this, you're trying to gym so trying to looks max, you are going to be lean maxing. And when you're lean maxing, then you're really not going to run into the problem of having a butt that is too fat and too big, unless you have just really terrible fat stores. And also, this whole idea of, hey, what if I overdevelop my glutes and they get too big? That's like thinking you're gonna go to the gym and get too bulky, right? Chances are, training your glutes right now is gonna be a net positive for your physique. And if you ever find yourself feeling like, hey, your butt is actually getting too big in your physique, you can just stop training it, right? You can just stop training it. If you want to stop training legs completely, that's totally fine as well, right? If you don't train any muscle that you don't want to grow, you can always just stop training it and let it atrophy. But the bottom line is this, right? Having a flat butt is just a massive failure and it can just really mess up your physique. And in general, when it comes to your leg training, you should be prioritizing the glutes and hamstrings over the quads as part of your leg training, with glutes coming as number one and hamstrings coming as number two. So that's the first muscle group that will improve your frame drastically from the side, which is going to be the glutes. Now, the second muscle group that is going to improve your frame from the side and also the front is going to be the upper back, right? You probably saw this photo at the start of Nocturnal Kent, and you can see, right, he has a decent physique from the front, right? He has a pretty good physique from the front. He has great delts, he has lats, but because when you go to the side, he doesn't have the developed glutes, right? As you can see here, he has a flat butt, which, like we talked about, is a phthalo, but he also has just a flat upper back in general. So that's why when he turns to the side, his physique looks so uncanny and just looks so weird in general. Whereas if you look at this guy is called Alpha Destiny or Alex Leonidas now on YouTube, and you can see, right, he has the glutes, thick glutes, and upper back, and because of that, his physique actually looks a lot more impressive, right? A lot bigger, a lot stronger from the side than Nocturnal Kent. Even though Alpha Destiny, he's actually a pretty short guy, right? I believe he's around 5'4", 5'5" and if you look at the photos of him in general and also before he started training, he actually has a relatively small frame as well. So even though he's short and he has a pretty small frame, because he has the upper back and glutes from the side, his physique, at least in these photos, just look a lot better than Nocturnal Kent's because, again, he's like completely flat from the side. So if you just have lats and side delts and no upper back, that is another phthalo, just like having a flat butt, and you'll basically just look thin from the side, right? Your whole body will look flat from the side. And again, we're not trying to be gym cells and max. We're not trying to get super big traps, get super yoked, and try and be gym cells and shave our heads off. But even if you're trying to go for like a pretty boy phenotype or whatever it might be, having upper back is still going to improve your physique drastically, right? This is a point I'm going to get into as well. So firstly, you need to have the first reason, right, why you need to prioritize upper back is that you need to have realistic expectations of what you can do with your side delts. Because the truth is this, right? After the first 2 to 3 years of training, the rate at which your side delt will grow and the rate at which your side delt will improve your physique will slow down drastically, right? After the first 2 to 3 years of training, you're really going to get at least 70 to 80% of your side delt growth. And after that, especially if you're natural, the rate at which your side delts can grow is going to be really, really slow, right? So you shouldn't just completely rely on side delts as part of your frame maxing. So after the initial gains have been tapped out, the meta I would recommend is just using shoulder pads or frame frauding methods to improve your bideltoid, right? This is a Korean frame frauding t-shirt that I recommend all the time. It's basically like a t-shirt with a shoulder pad built into it. I own one myself, and it can basically improve your bideltoid by 1 inch total, or there's even a 2-inch option, which is more extreme, right? If you want to learn which website to buy it from, and you need a Korean forwarding service to basically buy it for you and send it to you overseas. So if you're interested in that, you can go click the link in the description where I'll teach you how to do that as well. But basically, after the initial gains phase, your frame maxing is really going to be involving using frame frauding methods for your side delts, right? Because it's really going to take you like over 4 years to gain another inch from your side delts. So you might as well just start using frame frauding for more practical effect. And plus, training the back, right? The lats and the upper back. Because unlike the side delts, the upper back is just a much bigger muscle group in general, right? The traps and rear delts, you just have a lot more muscle mass there, and you just have a lot more potential to put on mass. So that's where really after the initial phase, this is what your frame maxing should look like, right? Using fraud maxing methods for your side delts while still training your side delts and focusing on not only your lats, but also your upper back to develop your upper body in general, right? Because the upper back, again, much higher growth potential, much more muscle mass, and it can really affect your shirt size. You can train side delts as much as you want, but really the total mass that you gain, the total visual difference to your physique is not going to be that crazy after the first 2 years, right? So that's why you got to focus on the upper back. And also, right, we talked about how upper back can really improve your frame from the side, but it also improves your frame from the front as well, right? Because when you train the traps, right, it basically builds up the traps from the front. And again, it improves your frame, right? The whole point of frame maxing through training in the gym is to just make our whole body, the outer extremities of our body, look bigger and wider. And we do that with side delts, right? Making our whole bideltoid look wider. We do that with lats, which make our whole upper torso region look wider. And we can also do that with the trapezius, right? The upper back, where we just make, again, our whole upper torso look taller and wider. This is especially important if you have a long neck, right? If you're someone with a long neck, a naturally long neck, then you really want to be training not only your neck, right? Because that's going to make your neck look thicker and less like a pencil neck, but also your traps. Because when you train your traps, right, it basically creates the illusion of a shorter neck, a shorter and more proportional neck, which is what we want. Because just having a long pencil neck is just really bad for your physique in general. So traps, right, specifically, not only improves your frame and your physique from the side drastically, but also just from the front as well, right? You don't have to go to this extent. Like, I know most of us aren't trying to look like this. This is kind of like overdoing it and looking like a gym cell. But just training your traps a little bit can still help your frame from the front, right? It'll just help your whole body look, your torso look taller, if you know what I mean. So the recommended training that I would recommend you do is just pick any machine row, right? You can do a chest support, any chest supported machine row, I should say, right? You can do plate loaded, you can do pin loaded, whatever you have in your gym that you like, with a pronated grip, because a pronated, or let's say a 45-degree grip, depending on your machine, it's just going to target the rear delts and upper back more. Whereas if you use a neutral grip and a tucked elbow, that's going to be more of a lat row. And use 4 to 8 reps at around 1 rep in reserve, right? If you know how to use RIR. If you do that, pick a machine you like, and that's how you're going to progressively overload it for months and years, and that's how you're going to really grow your upper back, right? That's like boring, but that's what works, right? Just doing the same thing over and over again and adding a rep, adding a bit of weight whenever you can. Another great exercise you can do for your upper back, which I've been doing as well, is the Kelso shrug, right? A Kelso shrug, I like to do it off of the T-bar row, but it's basically a shrug but horizontal, right? Because the upper back, or the traps I should say, the function of the traps is scapular retraction. And all 3 divisions of the traps, the upper, mid, and lower, all do scapular retraction. So really, if you do any chest supported machine row or any type of Kelso shrug, you're really going to be training the whole traps, right? The upper region that improves your frame from the front, the middle and lower region that improves your frame from the side. So just pick a good machine row or pick a Kelso shrug. I like doing it off of a T-bar row machine. Use straps and just progressively overload that for months and years, right? That's like the boring answer to the whole training thing. Now you might be thinking, hey, I don't want my traps to get so big, right? I want to keep my pretty boy phenotype, and I'm not trying to look like a gym cell. Again, right, this whole idea of I'm going to get traps that are too big, I'm going to get glutes that are too big, that's like thinking you're going to get too bulky from lifting in the gym. And if you're trying to gym cell, you're trying to looks max, then chances are you're going to be lean maxing anyways. And if you're lean maxing, then getting traps that are too big or glutes that are too big is really not going to be a problem at all, right? This is Dorian Sarashi, and you can see, right, he has a really, really developed upper back. And because he's lean, it's actually just really aesthetic and just really improves his physique in general, right? You can imagine if he has the same lats, but he doesn't have the upper back, where he just has a flat upper back with, you know, his scapulas poking out, then his physique will look a lot worse. So even if you're trying to go for like some kind of pretty boy phenotype, whatever it might be, and you're not trying to look like this, which I would not recommend at all, traps is still going to just help your physique and make your physique look aesthetic drastically, right? So again, right, reminder, having a flat butt and a flat upper back where your scapulas are poking out, those are just huge phalos for your physique. And developing those muscle groups will just make your physique look way more impressive. It'll make your physique look less weird, right? Because again, these are huge physique phalos. And yeah, they're just really underrated muscles that can improve your frame from the side and also a bit from the front as well. So if you found that helpful, you can go check out the BP Fitness system, which, you know, I'll talk about how to use natural gym selling as one of the best looks maxes, soft maxes, how to assess your frame, how to assess your bone structure, how to develop your physique based on your frame and bone structure, ideally, and also some illusion strategies like clothing and style maxing strategies, as well as just straight up fraud maxing strategies, right? How to hide fraud 2, 3, even 4 inches, how to frame fraud your bideltoid, and all of that, as well as how to build muscle without aging yourself, how to have low stress in your workouts, some diet guides in general, lean maxing strategies, and using carbs, right, without causing glycation and producing a bunch of AGEs. So you can check that out if you want. And lastly, once you determined the ideal physique for your frame and bone structure, as well as how to do so without aging yourself, you can use some science-based lifting training methods to basically get there as fast as possible, right? Speed run to your physique as fast as possible without wasting much time. And these are just a few screenshots of what they look like once you're inside, right? These are some of the videos you have on assessing your frame, some PDFs as well. These are just some more videos. You can see this. I have some guides on the primal diet and sourcing your meat, some more diet stuff and how to build muscle without aging yourself. And yeah, these are just also some training stuff in the last module about picking exercises, reps in reserve, putting together your program, running your program, certain special training methods and strategies. So if you're interested in that, definitely recommend checking it out. I know a lot of people who joined found it really good and really liked it. So yeah, definitely go check that out if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next video.